The games of the 35th Olympiad are awarded to Brisbane, Australia.
South East Queensland, a powerful region, a growing region, the first Olympic region. This is our opportunity to shape our future.
An opportunity to strengthen our economy and energise our diverse community. To make decisions that protect our environment. An opportunity to become better connected. To support next generation industries and emerging precincts that support our unique way of life.
This is our region, our future, our legacy. There's no time to waste. This is our golden opportunity.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to Future Brisbane, proudly presented by the Courier Mail. Wonderful to see a full house, also wonderful to see a bit of sunshine after all that rain we've had. We're in for a wonderful afternoon. We're going to discuss how those beautiful games that are coming up, the 2032 Brisbane and Olympic and Paralympic Games, will basically transform our city. It will redefine mobility, connectivity and livability across the southeast of our state. I'm Kylie Lang, the Associate Editor of the Courier Mail, and with me today is my long-term colleague and friend, Robert Craddock. Crash, as he's better known, is one of the superstars of the sporting reporting, and Crash will be giving us a panel later. But Crash, 9.5 years, hard to believe it'll be here in a blink. We'll be sitting in this exact same spot. What's it going to look like?
Well, just imagine the opening ceremony. If it is the Brisbane River, like it could be 1 million people out there just on each side. And so it's going to be extraordinary. And this will be the best seat in the house, Kylie. There's no question about that. But I'm looking forward to interviewing Emma McKeon, our greatest Olympian, later on. And also a panel with 4 gold medals on it. So that'll be to find out, what the athletes think. And so welcome to everyone, including Giaan Rooney down there. Now, Giaan lives in Lismore. Yes, indeed. And she's got a young family and a macadamia nut farm. So, and she doesn't leave home that often, but she said to me the other day, I felt this embodied the spirit of the lunch. She said, you know what, I don't come up that often, but I want to feel part of the vibe and the spark, and I want to ride it all the way through for the next 10 years. So I just thought that sort of embodied the spirit of the room today.
Thanks, Crash, and it'll be here before we know it. Thanks, Giaan, for coming. We'll hear from you a bit later then, Crash.
Thank you.
So a bit of housekeeping, please. So the restrooms are to my left and up the stairs. This is a no-smoking precinct. That includes vaporisers and e-cigarettes. So if you do want to smoke, and that's indoors and outdoors, you will have to go down to the start of the River Walk, ask the staff and they can show you where that is. Also, in the event of any emergencies, evacuations, just take a notice of your exit points. I know I feel like a flight attendant, but there they are. And the staff will guide you and give you directions in the event of an emergency and take you to safety. Today's event will also be filmed, so everybody put your best side forward, and it'll be streamed later on the Courier Mail website. I'd like to now welcome Marucci and Ran Hooper to the stage to do the Welcome to Country and also a didgeridoo performance. Thank you.
Balandiko, Gundulumbuler, Yang Indai, Yan Go, Gundai, Yan Go, Balamdiko Gundul Numbule, Balamdiko Gundul Numbule, Balamdiko Gundul Numbule, Balamdiko Gundul Numbule, Yang Indai, Yan Go Kundai, Yan Go. Balamdiko Gundul Numbule, Balamdiko Gundul Numbule. Yadani Australian Nabayagari Murambaga. Yadani Australia Boo. Yadani Australia Boo means advance Australia in strength. Ulkairi Marumba Mianjanu, that's welcome to Brisbane in the language of the Turrbal people. My name is Maruchi Baramba, which means the black swan from those people who sing up the wind. The painting on my face represents the black swan, and the painting on my cloak represents the black swan. I would normally sing a blessing of the gathering when I do a welcome to the country, but I've decided to substitute it today with a poem, and after that I will leave the stage with a song from my birthplace, which is a big Aboriginal community up near Kingaroy. I'll get to that in a second. Just a little bit about the Turrbal people. We were actually documented as being extinct or on the verge of extinction back in the early 1860s, and it's just been one small family that has survived the impact of European settlement upon our ancestral homelands. In saying that, we acknowledge we're a part of a much larger group, which takes in the geographics of being approximately south of the Tropic of Capricorn, east of the Great Divide, and north of the Macpherson Ranges. You've got about 11 odd different tribes there. We are what anthropologists would call the South East Queensland Aboriginal Societal Group. So just a little bit of background. So I'm actually from Cherbourg up in South Burnett, which is a big Aboriginal community. I've heard the speaker speaking earlier about some of the Olympians in the audience. Me, myself, I'm through my Birri-Gubba blood, not my Turrbal blood. I'm actually a tribal aunt of Kathy Freeman. So her father's a cousin of mine. So, you know black fellas with all the cousins, yes. So I shall now do the poem and then exit and wish you all the very best. Spirits of the land. Spirits of the land, they make a powerful force. Can't change the sun, the wind, the rain, or all the water's courses. For messing with the balance of the environment has shown to be destructive, a thing to prevent. For in traditional times before the white sails come, the people of the dreaming and the land was one. For in Australia, the Americas, everywhere, the original people are entitled to a share. Yellow sun, black and red, sign of hope for the road ahead. That yellow sun upon the black and red, that is the sign of hope for the road ahead. I've had a brain lapse for the second verse. Just 2 seconds. No, I'm not going to get you there. I'll just have to hop to the third verse. No good puffing, sniffing, charging, that's just gammon fun. You think it's lifting you up right to the top of your cup, but really it's pulling you down to 6 foot underground. You've got to be strong in heart and strong in mind. The road to true fulfillment are along those lines. Remember that yellow sun upon the black and red? That is your sign of hope for the road ahead. Yellow sun, black and red, sign of hope, road ahead, white 5-point star, diary, green, black, blue, the guiding light for me and you. Yellow sun, black and red, sign of hope for the road ahead, white 5-point star, diary, green, black, blue, the guiding light for me and you. Garinyin nami jujumobi ronu, garinyin nami, Carrying in the Nami, Chuchamobi Ron. Carrying the Nami, Chuchamobi Ron. Woo! Thank you.
Yeah, guys, is it on? Can you hear me? Right. I've just been called in last minute, so last night, 11 o'clock. So there's a few of you here that might recognise the name, maybe. So just quick introduction. My name's Ran Hooper. I was an ex-Brisbane Lions Hawthorn player. Back in, I think, 2006 was my first year at the Lions. So I think that year I was lucky enough by whoever was editing that day, I was on the front page for my debut that day. So thank you. I think it was Andrew Hamilton, maybe. So I've got into culture after the AFL. Not knowing much about it was a big issue for me, and it is now with the AFL players, and that's why there's such a huge culture in the AFL clubs. Not to take up more of your time, I'm just going to play a bit of Didge. So my two tribes are the Cooma and the Kunya tribe. So I was born in Charlton from Cunnamulla, but the Cooma tribe starts out near St George, goes towards Bollen, and then down south over to northern New South Wales. And then the Kunya tribe goes down from the Burke Road, probably about 200 k's, and then out towards Eulo as well, and up towards Wyandra. Okay, so I'll have a little play for you guys.
Thank you very much, Maruchi Baramba and Ran Hooper. I would now like to introduce the Managing Director of News Queensland and News Regional Media, Jason Scott, to provide an opening address. Welcome, Jason.
Thanks, Kylie. I just want to say welcome to everyone. I want to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, the Turrbal and Yuggera people, and pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. Lord Mayor Adrian Schrinner couldn't make it today, but I would like to acknowledge our Deputy Mayor, Chancellor Krista Adams. Thank you for coming, Krista. Normally there's a much longer list of dignitaries, but Parliament's sitting in both Brisbane and Canberra, so our political leaders are unable to join us. But a special welcome to all of our Olympians and Paralympians in the room. Can we just have a round of applause? Thank you. On June 20, 1846, the front page of the very first edition of the Courier Mail, it was then called the Moreton Bay Courier, was actually full of advertisements. Our MD of client, Lou Barrett's here from Sydney, should be delighted if that was still the case. Most of them were actually shipping companies offering to transport people and goods up and down the Brisbane River. A trip from Brisbane town to Ipswich on the steamer called Experiment I'm not sure I'd get on a boat called Experiment, but that's another, would cost 6 shillings for a cabin, 7 shillings for a tonne of freight, and 2 shillings for a bale of wool. The river, the ships and the wharves, the connective tissue that opened up Brisbane and the region. And if you think about today, we're surrounded by brave, ambitious examples of transport infrastructure. You could say this is the epicentre. This amazing venue, Howard Smith Wharves, were built in the 1930s along with another key piece of transport infrastructure, the Story Bridge above us, designed to connect people from the north of the city to the south. 50 metres below us is the Clem Jones Tunnel, at the time Queensland's largest transport infrastructure. Brave and ambitious. It's why the Courier Mail backed a bid for the 2032 Olympics and Paralympics, because it gives us permission to be brave and ambitious about how we move people and goods for the next 100 years. In a moment, you're going to get a sense of how we might do that. But I want to thank our partners who have made this campaign possible. Gert-Jan from Brisbane Airport Corporation. They're spending more than $5 billion in upgrades to the airport precinct over the next decade, including a third terminal. Treverson Baker from St Baker Energy Innovation Fund, which is pioneering EV charging technology in this country and driving the transition to electronic transport. Professor Deb Terry and the University of Queensland, we're so fortunate to have a world leader in education and research like UQ right here in the River City. Our global experts, PwC, Brisbane's managing partner Chris Rogan is with us today. Thank you for your support, Chris, and thank you for your insights and thought leadership as we prepare for 2032. The Bank of Queensland, a big partner of ours, which is helping Queensland businesses, particularly small businesses, prepare for that Games opportunity. Our good friends at Star Entertainment Group. Robbie Cook, the new CEO, couldn't be here today, but we've got Peter Jenkins, Group Executive for External Affairs. Thanks, Jenko, for your support. They're turning another piece of river infrastructure, Queen's Wharf, into a $3.6 billion tourism and entertainment precinct. I want to thank TransUrban CEO Scott Charlton and Queensland boss Sue Johnson for driving that connectivity agenda, and we're going to hear from Scott in a moment. And thanks to Adam Flaskas and your team at Howard Smith Wharves for this incredible venue. Talk about ambition. Thanks to Brisbane City Council for your support, David Carter and the team at RACQ Policy and Research Department for your data and insight, thank you. And our friends at 7 News Brisbane, thanks to Neil Warren and Max Future for your collaboration. And to Urbis directors Ben Slack and James Toomer, who are long-time partners of our advocacy campaigns, thank you. And to all of you, thank you for coming along today. I think you're going to see an interesting discussion. And we sort of want to light a fire under the proverbials of our politicians to get things moving. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Jason. I'd now like to introduce our keynote speaker. We're very lucky and very excited to have Scott Charlton with us today. Now, Scott is the CEO of TransUrban, which is a leading infrastructure company with operations in Australia and, of course, in North America as well. Scott has more than 25 years' experience in this field, in developing, funding, constructing and operating infrastructure assets, working with some of the leading companies in this sector. So as we continue to discuss connectivity going forward for the 2032 Games, Scott will be no doubt providing some very insightful thoughts for us to take on board today. Please welcome Scott Charlton.
Well, thanks very much for that introduction, and it's great to be here with everyone today. Again, great to be here in this terrific location next to the Brisbane River, and a road company. We love a good river. Causes bridges and tunnels, which is always good for us. So, as owner of the Clem 7, we are quite proud of that piece of infrastructure today. But it is going to be incredible to think that in just 10 years that Brisbane will have been an Olympic city in South East Queensland. And precincts like this one, as we know, and I've been involved in Olympics in the past, will be just as important as the stadiums and the villages. And of course, transport infrastructure, which I'm going to focus on today, which is more in my comfort zone. And one thing we know about Brisbane when it comes to transport, you certainly love your cars. And our data at TransUrban tells us that more than half of you are likely to use your car every day. Your household is likely to have at least 2 cars in the garage. And more than 20% of you in this room will have 3 or more vehicles. So as the CEO of a road transport company, we say thank you very much, and this is a great place to do business. But we're also a realist, and we recognize that the best cities in the world are those that are the easiest to get around and can continue to grow. And they are the cities with great road and public transport networks that work efficiently together and give people all the options they need and how they want to travel. Because the last thing that I think any of us want, including me, is to have bumper-to-bumper traffic crawling around the roads. And as I've often said, that I have no desire to be the CEO of a car park company, although I understand at the airport it's quite profitable. But that's just not our business model. But as we all know, on top of that, a lot of people are heading this way. And around 800,000 people will join this area by 2032. And by 2041, South East Queensland is expected to home around 5.5 million people. So we put that into context, that's more than double today's population on the Gold Coast will be coming this way in the next 20 years. And with a population of that size, if South East Queensland was put in the United States, it would be among the top 10 most populated regions in the United States. And then on top of that, in 2032, you're going to add hundreds of thousands of athletes, spectators, and officials descending upon this region with the world's biggest event, the Olympics and the Paralympic Games. And that's a lot of people traveling across Southeast Queensland, which is spreading the venues out over those 30 days. We expect public transport volumes alone will be 4.5 times normal levels during the day, with over 700,000 trips a day. And by 2032, I do not expect to be the CEO of TransUrban, but the last thing I want are some of the images that you'll see on this next slide, which hopefully we have a slide. But the slide is a picture of Rio in 2016. I don't know if we have any Olympic athletes who were there then during Rio. Apparently, before the Olympics, the transport authorities thought that they had the transport sorted. But this was nothing in comparison to the Atlanta Games, where 10% of the spectators missed the 100 meters men finals because they were caught up in traffic. And we know that athletes there, in some cases, nearly missed their events. And then we had a group of rowers that actually hijacked a bus because their driver got lost and they had to make their own way. So we were joking that it was easier to pick the event winners than it actually was the bus timetables in Atlanta. And then you had London, who is one of the world's best transport networks, as we all know, with the underground. But Transport for London said that normal traffic during that time would need to be reduced by 30% to allow the Olympic route network to operate. And in Beijing, half the city's cars were banned for use during the Olympics each day through the odds and evens rationing system. So history will tell us that planning and developing the right transport infrastructure, and that for us, when we say infrastructure for transport, means public transport, roads, active transport, and particularly these days using technology to create efficient and mobility solutions. It's critical for success when it comes to staging an event the size of the Olympics. But I think even more importantly for us and for everyone in this room is creating a legacy that will benefit the generations to come. Now, back in 2018, John Coates was still president of the Australian Olympic Committee, was quoted as saying that the congestion in Southeast Queensland roads and a lack of viable public transport could be the #1 reason that this region may never host an Olympic game. He said it wouldn't work, that the region would have come to a standstill, and at that time he did have a point. So if we look back, and TransUrban's been in this market for quite a long time there, back then our traffic modelers had forecast that in 20 years' time, commute times in Brisbane would increase about 40% in peak periods, and traffic speeds right across the day would reduce by 20%, based on then projected population growth. So put that in context, that means a driver commuting to the CBD during the morning peak from Ipswich could expect to spend an extra 40 minutes behind the wheel compared to what was the 2018 then commute time. Then if you put the Olympics transport needs on top of that, it's more likely that the region would have come to a standstill. But again, there's some good news there because there's nothing like a deadline, which we would say a deadline to us is an opportunity to get transport projects moving again. And there are quite a substantial number of projects right across South East Queensland, and they are going to make some difference. I think we're all familiar with Cross River Rail. We've got the Brisbane Metro, Gold Coast Light Rail Extension, M1 upgrade, Coomera Connector, and as well as plans to upgrade Gateway North and the Bruce Highway continuing upgrade. Again, great examples of transport projects and forward thinking that will serve Queensland well during the Games and for decades to come. And for us, and one of the reasons why we're here is Queensland has a reputation for forward thinking. And you see that the tunnels around the city, such as Clem 7, and I was with the Lord Mayor yesterday, Legacy Way and Airport Link, I know he's a big part of that, are very good examples of this forward thinking. And again, I was around at that time, and then as they were proposed, there were a lot of question, would there actually be the need? But those tunnels have now helped create a fit-for-purpose orbital road network that will cater for population growth, again, that is back among the fastest in the country. So thanks to some considered transport planning and visionary thinking, both now and over the years, South East Queensland is well in front of where some of the past Olympic cities have been, like Rio and Atlanta. So that's kind of the good news. However, as someone who has worked in infrastructure and transport for many decades, and I actually had a history with the Olympic planning process as an advisor to the Sydney Olympic Coordination Authority on funding major infrastructure, I still have these questions, and when you look at the combination of both the Olympics and population growth, will it be enough? And if we need to deliver more, at what point will it be too late? Because if further projects are going to be needed or proposed, Brisbane will be competing for jobs and businesses against Sydney and Melbourne at a time when the sector in infrastructure is facing record levels of development and a shortage in skills as well. And in South East Queensland case, those questions need to be addressed not only in the context of the transportation needs for the Games, but you've got this on top of this almost 1 million new people and population growth. So if I have the top line message or the take home message, never lose sight though that this is one of the single greatest opportunities that you'll ever have to make South East Queensland a truly global region that is recognized not just for its natural assets, which we all know are spectacular, but its built assets as well. It is your chance to ensure that the region is recognized for staging an incredible event, but also for leading in transportation solutions through world-class infrastructure and the latest transport technologies that will showcase this as a center of innovation. Again, if we take another look at the traffic modeling, even with these projects I just talked about, congestion will still be an issue in 2032. Our transport modeling team now has shown that the congestion levels in Brisbane in a decade's time will be 25% higher than they are today, again without the added pressure of hosting the Olympics during that period. So right now, Brisbane sits in 131st position place on what's called the TomTom Traffic Index, which ranks all the world's most congested cities. So that means Brisbane's congestion rating is 25%, which means on average, motorists are sitting in traffic for 25% longer every day than they should be if there was free-flowing traffic. But our traffic modeling predicts that Brisbane congestion rating would reach 31% by 2031. I know that maybe doesn't sound like a big number, but that's just a couple of points below Rome, London, and LA, where congestion levels are currently around 33%. And congestion in those cities is nearing pre-pandemic levels, and their traffic performance, again, is not something we'd want you to aspire to. And on top of this, the pandemic has seen changes in people's travel habits. I should say as well, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say, but we did have our biggest traffic day ever last Friday in Queensland. I think that was a combination of Schoolies Week on the Gold Coast and a few other things happening, but it was a good week. So we have seen traffic above pre-pandemic levels in Brisbane as well. And TransUrban we've been conducting research as we go through coming out of COVID to understand the impact on people's mobility, work arrangements, and transport preferences. And in August this year, we've been doing it for the last couple of years, our most recent research showed us that since the pandemic began, 25% of people in Brisbane have wanted to change their main mode of commuting to work or study. Now, most have swapped from public transport to private vehicles, and we've seen that in secondhand vehicle sales and other data. And they expect to remain traveling that way for at least the next 12 months. And again, that sounds very positive for our company, and again, one of the reasons why we're seeing record traffic numbers. But again, such a substantial long-term shift in transport modes would be unsustainable for the road network that we have. Because the most productive and livable cities have efficient transport networks and integrate roads and public transport to meet demand. So taking into account forecasts and data like this, I believe there is more to think about. And if any other major project developments are to be considered, again, I would say it's time for action. Because infrastructure projects on any scale take a tremendous amount of time, take years of planning and collaboration as well as investment and resources. And it's only getting harder and longer. The construction phase alone on Cross River Rail is expected to take 7 years from early works. That is without any supply chain disruptions or labor shortages. And the amazing precinct that we are here today, Howard Smith's Wharf, so thank you for that. I understand took 8 years of planning, consultation before a development application was even submitted. And you couple that with the development pipeline, the scale of being undertaken here in South East Queensland, and there will be unexpected issues, they're sure to emerge, and even despite the most solid planning efforts, so to quote Dick Cheney, and it's infrastructure, it happens all the time, we don't know, the unknown unknowns occur all the time. So going back to my Olympic coordination days in Sydney, some may recollect that there was a small rare frog that had an impact on the Sydney Olympics. It was endangered. It was appropriately named at the time, the green and golden bell frog, and it was discovered during the site development at Olympic Park in Sydney, which was an old brickyard and some unused industrial areas. Now that discovery alone significantly influenced the design and development of the park to protect the frog's habitat and meant moving the major venue and doing a lot of other work to protect the frog. Now anyone that works in infrastructure in Sydney will ironically know that for an endangered frog, it shows up on every site in Sydney that we try to do work. So we obviously are doing well because it shows up everywhere. But you will find those unknown unknowns that will mean that it takes more time and more effort than we think. And I think one of the things we're really proud of is what we've been able to do here in Brisbane is when our recent project upgrade on Logan and Gateway Extension motorway, which factored in the need to care for the local wildlife, and we've got a big fauna bridge, which is one of its kind, which is quite a neat piece of architecture for an infrastructure nerd, was completed in what we'd say was phenomenal rapid time, and that was over 4 years though, just to widen a road project from the time we submitted the government to complete the 15 kilometers and upgrade the interchange, which opened in 2019. Now we also think, and I know the private sector was involved in the Olympics in Sydney, that this is a great example of how we can support government in bringing some of these projects forward and hopefully fast-tracking projects, particularly when we understand government budgets are spread across a lot of priorities as well. And here in Southeast Queensland, governments have plenty to deliver with that population growth, including schools, hospitals, and the infrastructure as well. And for us, the TransUrban Queensland, we solely funded the Logan Enhancement Project, and the productivity and community benefits are ongoing, and it has been one of our best performing roads, and we appreciate the Trucking Association supporting that project as well. And travel time savings are up 20 minutes, and the number of crashes, which we're really pleased on that motorway, has been reduced by 65%. So we've impacted a lot of people's lives in a positive way. Now, of course, transport planning is about more than just major infrastructure projects. And again, technologies and innovations are creating a range of opportunities for more efficient, safer, and sustainable mobility. And again, it's been great to see Queensland leading the way in adopting or promoting technologies in the form of either the micro-mobility, such as the e-scooter testing ground, or creating one of the world's longest electric supercharger highways in a single state. And as an owner of an electric vehicle, I appreciate that. And the Olympics often provide that kind of impetus for progressive, innovative thinking. Los Angeles' vision for their Olympics is to become the transport technology capital of the world by the time it hosts its Olympics in 2028. An image such as this on the screen shows the scale of the ambition of what they're thinking. And if you've ever driven around LA, you'll know that realizing their vision will take some seriously ambitious thinking. And the artist's rendition is always interesting from the reality. But this is where people are expected to form various transport hubs, shared bikes, scooters, electric cars, shuttle, as well as autonomous aerial transport. And while creating a hub such as this may attract the headlines, technology also gives us the ability to improve our existing infrastructure and make it more efficient and safer. Again, sorry to apologize getting down into the nerdy technology stuff, but there's actually a lot of stuff out there in transport. For example, our intelligent transport systems on our motorways can actively manage traffic flows to improve capacity and safety. Some components, including signals to manage traffic entering ramps, lane use management system, variable electronic speed signs, which improve the ability to quickly change speed limits or close lanes if needed. So just through technology alone, some of our analysis on our big CityLink asset in Melbourne has showed that if we use this lane use management system, we improved peak speeds by 34%. And the positive impact on changing speed limits was also evident during the Gold Coast Commonwealth Games when the government's decision to reduce speeds on the M1, which reduced the number of crashes and then importantly improves travel time reliability. And we have a new 24/7 traffic control room in Kedron, which is nearing completion, which is our most advanced control room across the group, including the US. And we're using artificial intelligence technology to help manage traffic flow and safety across all our roads. And this smart system will automatically identify incidents and congestion and alert control center operators and put plans in place to deal with it. And we respond to thousands of incidents a month. So this technology is expected to help us improve our response and clearance times and hopefully keep you moving efficiently. Now, technologies such as these and what's actually on the road, and there's thousands and thousands of devices, may not be visible, but they are all contributing to create more efficient and safer transport. But again, I come back, they take a long time to implement and a long time to install. Right now, we're 10 years out from the Games, and 9.5 years out from the Games, I guess, and that seems like a lot of time to get it right. But many other cities thought time was on their side when it came to the infamous stories of the last-minute dashes to putting finishes touches on stadium and infrastructure. And again, some of the athletes would have known in Rio when the athletes arrived, the village was uninhabitable. And in Sydney, which is still regarded as one of the best games ever, we were still painting and installing seats right up to the last minute. And you have to remember, Sydney actually started building venues before they got the games because they knew they could not be ready in time if they didn't start building the venues. And experience will tell us never to underestimate the time and unexpected challenges that you may encounter heading into 2032. And as exciting as it is that Brisbane will be the Olympic city, there are some questions over the cost versus long-term benefits sometimes for some of these host cities. And that's hardly surprising when you can see some of the images of some of the derelict purpose-built infrastructure like in some of the other Olympic cities. But I can say, as from the transport side, one of the great things about the Games is you can learn from those mistakes. And while too many Olympic venues have become white elephants in some cases, transport white elephants around the Olympics have been impossible to find. The Games have often provided a much-needed catalyst to accelerate transport projects that have always seemed to provide additional benefits to the Games hosts. And again, in South East Queensland is in a very unique position, because when the Olympic athletes and the crowds have left, there will still be close to 1 million more people in this region who need to be catered for. And the success of the Games will come down to the long-term legacy they create for this growing region. And again, and if Queensland gets it right, which we expect you to, because you always do, this region will cement its place as a global draw card long after the Games have ended. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Scott. That was fascinating. I learnt so many new things. I think we've got to get our skates on, that's for sure, but we're in for a great ride ahead. We're going to take a short break now for our main meals, and we'll be back after that. Enjoy. Thank you.
anything but the truth. The truth. 3 little words over time, overheard and overused. Used. No sweet nothing could ever be turned into something new. No grand gesture could ever be made to measure you. I know what I got and I know where we're going. You don't need to show it, I already know it all. It's what you don't do, it's what you don't say. I know you love me, I don't need proof. It's what you don't do, the games you don't play. Oh, I know you love me, I don't need proof. I've been saving up my time so I can spend it all on you. On you. Oh, all I need is to see you smile. I've forgotten how to be blue. I know what I got and I know where we're going. You don't need to show it, I already know it all. It's what you don't do, it's what you don't say. I know you love me, I don't need proof. It's what you don't do.
Welcome back, everybody. I hope you're enjoying your meals. It's wonderful, lovely food. It's sensational. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce my boss, the editor of the Courier Mail, Chris Jones. Now, Chris is going to conduct a panel with some experts. It's going to be very interesting. Everybody's very well prepared, and it'll be a very, I guess, energetic discussion. So please welcome Chris Jones and our panellists.
Thanks, Kylie. Said all the right things there, Kylie. I appreciate it will be very interesting. Now, firstly, just a quick apology. Anika Wells, the Federal Sports Minister, was going to be on this panel, but she's stuck in Canberra, and she's blaming David Pocock. So all correspondence to David Pocock. She texted to say she's also missing her 2-year-old twins' Christmas presentation this evening, so it's a legitimate excuse. Thanks, Scott, for that excellent keynote. I'll firstly introduce our panel. Who have we got here? So Gert-Jan Graaff is the CEO of Brisbane Airport Corporation, of course a great supporter of the Courier Mail's advocacy campaigns. Great to have you here, Gert-Jan. Deborah Terry is, of course, the Vice-Chancellor and President of the University of Queensland and a regular on this panel at this event. So welcome back, Deb.
Thank you. Thank you.
Trevor St Baker, who's the founder and Deputy Chairman of the St Baker Energy Innovation Fund. Trevor's a man who always speaks with great wisdom, and I'm sure that will be the case again today. Thanks for joining us, Trevor. And finally, the Bank of Queensland's Chief Economist and Head of Market Strategy, Peter Monkton. Wonderful to have you here, Peter, representing our great supporters at BOCOG. Ladies and gentlemen, campaigning to make this place better has always been at the core of what the Courier Mail does. Jason spoke about that original front page of the first edition of the paper. There's an editorial in there as well that promised to encourage every enterprise that will tend to benefit this colony and in general to advance its interests and promote its prosperity. That is, from day one, the Courier Mail's focus has been on making this place better. And every one of the 39 editors who've done this job before me have done what I do every day, and that is walk in through the doors and think, how can I play my role in making paradise perfect? That's why we led the way in the campaign for the Games, encouraging the state government to get behind the bid in the early days. You know, not everyone around George Street were wearing Olympic pins on their lapel 7 years ago, I can assure you. And then the feds to come to the party when we got to the pointy end, actually working out who's going to help pay for this stuff. And it's why we run these future series annually. It's to spark a conversation and to drive action about what we need to be doing as a community to take advantage of this once, not in a lifetime, I see this as a once in a forever opportunity for our city and our region and our state. We can't miss it. And this year's theme, last year's theme was legacy. This year's theme builds on that, and it's about mobility and connectivity. And the reason that we've gone with mobility and connectivity is exactly what Scott was saying, that you can't waste a day. This stuff takes a long time. No matter what happens at the Gabba, there will be a place to run the athletics when the curtain goes up on the Olympics. The challenge is, how do we make sure that this opportunity doesn't pass us by? There's 5 aspects to our coverage this year relating to mobility and connectivity. And the first is, if you remember back to 2015, when the Council of Mayors first came up with the idea of bidding for the 2032 Games, the key driver was to get transport infrastructure built that would otherwise maybe fall victim to the politicians arguing forever. You needed a deadline to deliver to. And so the first theme is thinking about us as a region and connecting the regions, whether that's a second M1 or a train line up to the Sunshine Coast, a chairlift to Toowoomba, I don't know, but hooking up all of the regional centres together. Secondly, you zoom in a little bit and you talk about the suburban links. And one concept that I really liked at our Future Roundtable this year was Michael Caine from the RACQ. And he challenged us to think about streets and roads as different things. Roads are the thoroughfares, streets are where you live your life. There's also lots of work we need to do about public transport. What is the future for the metro? How do we just make sure that it's a livable city if you live in the suburbs, have to come into the CBD and get across town? And third, you zoom in again and you get to this idea of the inner city, the CBD of Brisbane, being the Brisbane Olympic and Paralympics Park, the home bush of 2032. And the great opportunity that gives you if you think about this part of the world, what we can do here to really maximise that opportunity. I do a 2032 related podcast with Lutzi from Nova, who's over there next to Susie O'Neill. And our guest this week was Harvey Lister. And Harvey was talking about the walkability of these games is going to be unique because we have so many venues right in the CBD. And on day one of our campaign, one of the big ideas that came up was extending that beautiful bougainvillea-lined arbour from South Bank down to the Gabba and the other way out to Suncorp Stadium and even this way. And Adam Flaskas from Howard Swift Wharves, our host today, has added the idea of even a bougainvillea-lined river walk going down this way, but really sort of thinking what is unique about South East Queensland, what can we deliver as part of these games to make the most of the opportunity. So they're the sort of geographical lenses to view the opportunity. And the other two I want to touch on are accessibility and technology. And accessibility is critical. These are not only the Olympics, they're also the Paralympics. And it would be remiss, as the Premier has discovered, for any of us to ever forget that fact. And so what are the opportunities do we have to make Brisbane the most accessible city in the world because we're hosting the Paralympics in 2032? And again, second plug, Lutzi, of our podcast. Recently we had Paralympic legends Carney Liddell and Brenden Hall on there talking about what life's like if you live with a disability to get around Brisbane. And their challenge for us was not to think about it as a 2032 challenge, but to think about it as a challenge for tomorrow. And the final theme is that opportunity of technology to better link our region. Drones, electric vehicles, those cool vertical lift helicopter things. Not sure if I'd get in one, but that looked very cool. And Chelsea Waugh at the Queensland Academy of Sport said she wanted one to get from home at Bulimba over to Cusack, so she's first off. But also thinking about connectivity as well. So, how can we make the most of connectivity? Ladies and gentlemen, it is true that we must view this opportunity as more than just 4 weeks of sport in a decade from now. And that's what Future Brisbane is all about. And so, to our panel, Debbie, to you first. If we focus on transport and mobility, what kind of long-term legacy should we be seeking to create for Brisbane and the South East as a result of hosting these games?
Well, thank you very much, Chris, and great to be here today. And I think Scott gave us a terrific keynote speech today that really set the scene very much for this important discussion. I just want to make 3 quick points. For me, actually, I'm just going to take it to a higher level than transport and mobility to start off with. I think the most significant long-term legacy coming out of Brisbane hosting the 2032 Games is delivering that climate positive Olympics and Paralympics. That is absolutely critical. It will give us the opportunity to leapfrog in terms of our transition to a net zero future. And as Scott told us, a deadline is an opportunity. We are well positioned in this space. I mean, I was at the CEDAR event when the Premier launched the jobs plan and the energy and jobs plan, and really pointed to the fact that universities, industry, government absolutely need to be working together in terms of delivering on that plan. And we've made a commitment to a climate positive Olympics. This 2032 deadline will maintain pressure on achieving that goal, and in terms of legacy, quite frankly, it doesn't get any better than that. And then that obviously will mean that we will see a generational change in the adoption of low carbon transport options. I know Trevor's going to talk about that, and I know he will say, and I agree with him, the shift to EVs obviously is being assisted with government assistance, but it's also getting cheaper, and it's getting much cheaper, and that's going to drive that transition. Then what we've got to do is to ensure that we've got some great transport infrastructure projects happening at the moment. We've got to ensure that we optimise the benefits of each of those, and then it's all about connectivity, and that's going to be a word I think we're going to hear a lot here. Peter Hyland, many people will know, previous Regional Director of Urbis, currently with our School of Architecture and Planning. His very clear message is we've got to optimise this new transport infrastructure and ensure that seamless connectivity. Final point, inclusion and accessibility is absolutely critical. Andrew Liveris, as we all know, President of the Steering Committee, his statement, these games will be the capacity to drive positive impact through the prism of sport. So for transport, our commitment to legacy coming out of the Paralympics has to be the fact that the principles of inclusion, accessibility, universal design are built into our planning for transport infrastructure right from the beginning, and ensure that infrastructure, accessible mobility caters for absolutely everybody.
Now, you mentioned Peter Hyland. Peter Hyland came to our roundtable, and his big message for us was that there's no plan. Where is this catch-all infrastructure plan? Where's the coordination committee that can deliver these things across government, but also outside of political cycles? Peter, maybe speaking as an economist, maybe what are the benefits of having that plan, and what are the risks if we continue down the path without one being in existence?
Yeah. So the first thing is, as Scott mentioned and we've spoken about, the government has got a lot on, right? There's a bunch happening, and it's a really difficult period in terms of lack of resources and people. So the first thing is the current set of projects must be managed really well. But you're absolutely right. Having a good strategic long-term plan really matters. It really matters because if you think through why infrastructure projects don't work, or over budget, spend too much money and so forth, one of the reasons is upfront you haven't planned very well. So that's the first bit about getting that done very well. The second bit, if you've got a very good strategic plan that's very well understood across everyone, is that everyone else can plan. The wider economy can plan about what's happening, where people are going, so forth. And so that enables the economy in the future to make better long-term investments. And the third thing is, what we do know is, as Scott touched on, Brisbane's not the only place that needs a whole lot of infrastructure happening. A lot of other cities need to do that, and in fact, not only in Australia, but globally. So we need to be planning our resources from that. What that does mean is that resources perhaps need to go from other parts of the economy into the infrastructure part of the economy, right? And if you've got a big long-term plan about we're doing this, followed by that, then all of a sudden resources can be directed that way. Now, the City of Brisbane earlier this year did actually put out a 25-year strategic direction about which way it's going, right? So that's a really good first step in terms of what will be happening. Is it as detailed as you want? Perhaps not. Is it as well known as it should be? Well, that's the great advantage of this, of course. So that's sort of going to be a really good thing that we've started that way, because it's good that we're starting now, because in 1906, 9 out of the 11 subway areas in London had been built. 9 out of 11. At that point in time, London's population was 6.6 million. In 40 years' time, that's where South East Queensland's population will be. So starting now, thinking about what will be, that's what we need to do, because that's what other cities have done.
Yeah, and another fact that's often thrown, that I've often heard around the place, is that when Melbourne hosted the Com Games in 2006, their population is pretty well the same what Brisbane or South East Queensland will be in 2032. And you think about all the stuff that Melbourne had, and you know, the question's often posed, where's our stuff? Where's that going to come from? Scott talked about, he said the good news is that Rio and Atlanta were also nowhere near as well planned as we are already. I mean, let's hope that certainly is the case. But Trevor, if we think about South East Queensland and this transport infrastructure, what are some of the key points that we're going to have delivered by 2032?
Well, Scott, we had to have a vision beyond LA 28 in 6 years' time. And we saw a bit of their vision on the screen. And they're now committing to a totally different electrification of the transport sector and a zero-emission transport sector, which, by the way, is happening because it's a fifth of the cost to fuel and a tenth of the cost to service and maintain electric vehicles. It's happening worldwide. It's going to happen here. It has to happen by. So
it's not about saving the planet.
It's not saving the planet. It's putting pockets in family. It's putting money in families' pockets, in business pockets, and it's happening in before 2032. Yeah. In Brisbane can be all electric taxis by 2030. Well before that, but it's the technology that I think is important. The plans for the plans for LA in 28 haven't come from political, bureaucratic sort of committee decision making. It's come from the private enterprise. Yeah. Private enterprise in there to get the technology committed to be in place to actually deliver those economical savings from electrifying the transport sector. It's the one area of decarbonisation that will save us big bucks. Most of the rest of it, causes us problems. But by 2030, by 2032, beyond 4 years beyond LA, it should be, there should be fairly globally proven, and therefore Brisbane demonstrating autonomous EVs. Autonomous vehicles. All the buses will be electric. It'll be the quietest, cleanest city, in as clean and quiet as any city in the world. And you mentioned the vertical offtake, the battery electric vehicles above ground. How are we going to get everyone to the Olympic to the Gabba on time? They can walk there, but they can also vertical offtake and land. There'll be all of these things going, and there'll be one of the big things is there'll be the tunnels designed for electric vehicles, zero-emission vehicles, and one of the main tunnels is to get trucks off the road, and to have a transport freight hubs west at the ends of the rail lines coming to the west of Brisbane. They've got to get to the seaport. And there is private enterprise today wanting to build that tunnel and that end of the inland rail, the end of the Darling Downs rail line at Ebenezer, and a 50-kilometre electric shuttle rail tunnel to the airport will take 300 or 400,000 truck trips a year off Brisbane's roads. And so I
love that idea of the cleanest, quietest city. If you think about, it feels like we need a mission statement. And if you think about transport mobility, yes, it's the M1 and yes, passenger rail and routes, whatever, but to be the cleanest and quietest city opens up all those opportunities, like as you just pointed to, mandating that taxis should be EVs by 2030, or thinking how are we going to get trucks off the road? Well, the inland rail is just going to stop at Acacia Ridge or Ebenezer. Like, what's the opportunity to get to the port? I think that's
a 50-kilometre tunnel from there to the airport, and there's a private sector proposal out at the moment, and we can't talk about it for years and years. We've already gone 1 year since we've announced the Olympics. That has to be committed soon.
Now, if you think about clean and quiet, one of the noisiest parts, is as successful as it is out at the airport. What are you guys doing in terms of being, accepting that challenge that Deb said of being green out there at the airport? Gert-Jan?
Yeah, well, we don't try to be the noisiest in the city, and that's one of the main reasons to build the second runway that is not only providing additional capacity to the airport, but it also provides the opportunity to operate the majority of all flights to and from Brisbane Airport over the bay, and that of course has beneficial outcomes for the community. We can do better, and there's currently an initiative from Air Services to implement improvements to get better noise outcomes for the community, and we full-heartedly support those proposals. So that's one part of it. Sustainability and accessibility is obviously things that are very close to our hearts. In terms of sustainability, we recently announced that Brisbane Airport will be net zero in 2025 for our Scope 1 and 2 emissions. We're probably the first, and if not one of the first airports in the world that will be able to achieve that, at the back of a green power purchasing agreement, as well as transitioning our fleet into an electrical fleet and other technologies that will enable us to be net zero. Incredibly important for our industry because we are under a magnifying glass, under a microscope when it comes to becoming green. And that was referred to in the introduction today. As part of the development of the airport, we will build a new terminal. We're currently in discussions with the airlines what that new terminal will look like, and it should be operational during the Olympics. And in light and aligned with the Olympics, we want that terminal to be carbon positive as well. So that's the aim for it. And at the same time, that terminal, like our other terminals, will provide access for everyone. So that's what we stand for.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have something like 110,000 vehicles coming to the airport every day. What are some of the things? Well, firstly, by 2032, what does that look like? But I assume you need some changes made to think through that as well.
Yeah. Just before COVID, the last full year of service of the airlines in 2019, there were 24 million passengers at Brisbane Airport and 24,000 people working in the precinct, and then about 10 to 12,000 people providing service to the airport every day. So for everyone here in the room, rule of thumb, 1 million passengers is about 1,000 jobs in the precinct and other jobs associated with that. We believe that we will have in the Olympic year 10 million passengers more than we had in 2019, between 34 and 35. That means that traffic, if nothing changes, will increase from currently about 110,000, 120,000 movements to way over 150.
It won't look like that Rio picture.
Well, that's one of the major concerns. So what we can provide for is good air networks, and that's what we're investing for. That's where the new runway comes into the picture. That's where the terminal is. But we're heavily dependent on ground transport as well. People need to get to and from the airport. And we cannot build car parks forever. We've got 22,000 bays as it is, and they're quite full. We cannot build roads at the airport forever, and even connecting roads. We need better mass transport solutions in Brisbane. That's essential to move people around, not only during the Olympics, but post-Olympics as well.
The issue is that AirTrain has a monopoly till 2036, 4 years after the Games.
Yeah. No, true. When the
AirTrain's expensive and it doesn't run a lot and it's really not part of the network, right?
No, so when
anyone from AirTrain here?
No, look, when the AirTrain was built, it was a great thing. And look, it's fantastic for an airport to have rail connections. But it's true, the AirTrain runs a relatively low frequency, relatively limited operating hours, And there's an anti-compete clause in place that states that no other public transport connections can be, or services can operate within a kilometre of our terminal buildings. That's an issue, because that immediately restricts people to travel, not only to and from the terminal buildings to travel, but also to work. And that's where the major employment hubs are at the airport. So we would love to see that anti-compete going away, and other transport solutions coming to the airport. Could very well be that the metro is the ideal solution. It's a very sustainable solution. If you saw the Brisbane City Council map, there's actually a dotted line to the airport. That would be fantastic for us, but not for the airport only. It's for all the people working in the precinct that currently completely dependent on driving in and out. It would be fantastic for them as well to have options, to have choice, to travel to and from their work.
Now, Deb, if we think about the Brisbane, it's, I suppose, like any city in the world, it's got its own unique characteristics. And I grew up in Brisbane in the 80s, where we were, with Com Games and Expo, we were starting to throw off and resist that idea of being labelled a big country town. I'm working kind of on a thesis that maybe we want to hold on to being a big country town as we become an Olympic and Paralympic city. What, in your view, are some of the characteristics of Brisbane and South East Queensland that we want to make sure that we maintain at all costs as we move towards a region of 5 million people in 2041?
Yeah, no, thanks, Chris. I mean, obviously Brisbane's got a great reputation as being a very livable city. We've got lots of green spaces, lots of biodiversity. We've got the river. We've got all the walkways, the green bridges, etc., which hopefully will increase. And so, you know, they're really positive things. But as you say, even if we look forward to 2032, we're anticipating significant population growth, which means we've got to get all of those transport connections right, and the right mix of transport, and the right ways in which we can encourage, you know, active walking, cycling, etc. But the second thing is, I think we've got to ensure, so when we look at the data, yes, we saw through COVID, you know, quite a lot of national migration. We don't attract as many of the international skilled migrants who come to Australia to help drive our economy and our new industries. They tend to go to Melbourne and Sydney, New South Wales and Victoria. And I think what we need to be thinking about as a legacy coming out of the 2032 Games is, what does our city need to look like in terms of supporting the economy of the future, and help continuing to be seen to be a livable city that driving that sort of economic and social prosperity. And we know, we look around the world, the biggest growth that's happening in cities around the world is the development of these innovation precincts. They're mixed use, people want to live there, they can commute quite quickly to neighbourhood areas. You've got industry there, you've got startups, you've got universities, because that's where a lot of the ideas for the new industries are going to come from. And how do we, through this period, think about what Brisbane needs to look like to support and help drive economic diversity, economic growth, and our economic and social prosperity. And that's the great opportunity. Yes, we've got to do a lot for the Games in terms of transport and getting up to 2032, but we've got to have in our mind, what does the city need to look like as we anticipate population growth and as we support the economy and the environment of the future.
I think it's a great point about, we'll stray a little bit from transport, maybe to you, Peter, next, thinking about what are the opportunities in terms of industries that we can turbocharge through the opportunity of 2032. And one thing that I bore everyone at the pub about is my vision of sports tech. You know, there's great building blocks with Vald, with stuff that's happening around UQ, others, of being the sports tech capital of the world, or at least the Asia Pacific, through, you know, hosting the Olympics and Paralympics. I suppose, how important, Peter, is it for the economy to diversify in terms of building sustainable growth in the city and region?
I think that absolutely is. So You know, if you've got all your numbers on just on one number, you're going to have a bit of a problem if it doesn't come up. So diversification is a really good thing. You know, to me, the tech thing, if you think about what's happened in Australia and the economy, over the last 10 years, spending on tech, digitalisation, whatever you want to call it, has essentially doubled relative to the economy size. Right? Yet, the amount of spending in Australia is half that of the US. So there's a lot more to come, right? And one of the things that we could also do, in addition to the private sector doing stuff, is that if you look what governments are doing, the state government spending is 15% of our economy. If you compare sort of say, you know, Service New South Wales, Service Victoria, is there a Service Queensland? If you look at the Service Victoria one, it's really links to websites. Can we do better than that? If you go to Estonia, they lead the world on e-governance. You know, you don't have to fill out a form every time. Your data's there. A lot of the information's available. If you're a small business, you might get a bit of a ping. Did you know this program could be for you? That sort of stuff. So there's a massive opportunity in terms of what we're thinking about the Olympics, what we're going to be doing in technology. There's going to be a lot of digitisation spending. I think there's a big potential upside for our economy, both in terms of the private sector, but also how the government interacts with the wider economy.
Trevor, let's get back to thinking about moving around. Can you paint me a picture? You spend all your time thinking about this. Paint me a picture of what getting around in South East Queensland is like. Let's go 2035. Push it forward just a little bit further.
Well, okay, can I just start with the Olympics being recognised Olympic City for 2032, at the same time as electrification of transport is going to be the biggest technology change that's going to change all those things. And it's happened at the same time as the Southerners can't believe that Brisbane is a technology capital of EC fast charging. Brisbane, manufacturing and exporting 3 ships round the clock, manufacturing the second largest supplier of DC fast chargers in the world. That's already happened, and they can stay in the lead of that. We can develop that, and we're at the centre of that. Also exporting those ideas to the rest of the world. But the idea is we're already having nearly half a megawatt charging rates on highways. We've got a vision of 1 megawatt charging within about 5 years for trucks and really fast buses, although our chargers all around Europe at 350 kilowatts, by the way, are being mostly used by trucks at the moment around Europe. So that a truck can stop for lunch, but when you double the size of the charger to 1 megawatt chargers, they can stop for a cup of coffee and be fully charged and on their road again. These things are happening, and the technology goes to car ownership. The new generations aren't owning cars. The new generation are because at 1/5 of the cost of fueling a car with electric power in premises, that's happening, and it's going to happen at an accelerated rate. You've got to have the technology to go the last mile to public transport, because clearly the tunnels have to be built at the maximum rate that the gear we have can build them, and it's got to be planned tunnel on top of tunnel, as you said earlier. We've got to know now which tunnel is it going to go to next. Is it the Ebenezer to Port tunnel? Is it the metro to the highway, or is it the Sunshine Coast rail line that might need a tunnel? Maybe not. But then once you've got that public transport, you've then got to look at different solutions of the last mile connection. It can be connected to the rail, be the same ticket. It can actually be hubs. They'll develop all different ways. But these ideas will come from the private sector, because we didn't become the global headquarters of DC fast charging technology by governments telling us how to do it. No one knew about it till it was happening, and they go out and visit. They're still amazed at what's happening out at Murray.
In 2035.
Didn't quite get there.
When I order my Uber, is it an autonomous vehicle, and can I order a helicopter?
Well, vertical offtake and land has to be at least in around the world 4 years after LA, because they're going to master that by 2028. So, I mean, this is what we've got to think about, not what we're thinking now.
Yeah.
What is the vision after LA's vision for 2028.
Yeah.
And it'll take us 10 years to get to actually commit and get it done.
Yeah.
So it'll probably be less cars on the road, more ride hail. People will be going door to door. There's parking stations, and they'll be connecting to all the public transport. There'll be autonomous locations where people get every 10 minutes a ride to the local rail station, because we can't build stations to every suburb.
So I think the point is we need to be thinking of it more than just, what we have now, and be looking beyond the horizon. And that's really what today's discussion is about. I'll tell you a little secret. I was watching the clock, thank you, and it said 13:29. I'm like, oh, we're only halfway through, but it's actually, I was looking at the time. So anyway, we're out of time. But I just, while I've got you here, because I don't want to lose you yet, I'm just going to ask you all for a one sentence. What is the most important thing that this room needs to walk away and be thinking about in terms of what we need to be focusing on for the opportunity in transport, mobility, connectivity for the region? Maybe we'll just go down. You starting, Gert-Jan?
Yeah, well, Brisbane Airport Corporation's vision for Brisbane Airport is to connect the world, create a future. And we're connecting the world through the air, connecting the world over land. That's equally important. You need both networks. Probably the most important one is connect people, working together. And I think each and every person in this room, we should talk to each other to set those priorities in terms of connectivity. What is really going to make the difference, and how do we maintain that livability of the city going forward, given the population growth, given the fact that we will develop this city further. I think it's all about working together, setting priorities, and getting it done, because ultimately we can talk till the cows come home. We need to start working on things.
Great. Deb? One thing.
One thing. Well, we've got to have a clear plan for up until 2032 for transport and mobility. It's got to be an ambitious plan. It's got to be a courageous plan. It's got to be linked to what we know we need to do to get to a net zero future. And it's got to be in the context of understanding what the legacy is, and the legacy is to ensure that Brisbane remains a highly livable city that is well positioned for the economy of the future.
We want to use the 2032 Olympic Games opportunity for the world to see this is the best place in the world to live and work. And when I saw the end of the Tokyo Olympics, Paris showing off, come to Paris in 3 years. It was 3 years' time. We should be doing that 10 years ahead, 9 years ahead, because it's on the 16th of July 2032, in the middle of winter in the southern hemisphere, that we're going to be showing off the cleanest, sunniest, quietest place in the world, where people are going to restaurants and everything, and because we don't only just want them to come in 2032, we want them to start coming here now. That's what we got the Olympic Games for. It's to get people to come in 2030, in 2026, 2040, tomorrow, and to run their conferences here. This is as good a place as anywhere. And when the rest of the world sitting north of the Mediterranean and know what their winter is, and this is the 16th of July in the middle of winter in the southern hemisphere. Look at Brisbane.
Yeah. So start today, Peter.
Yeah, I'm not quite as visionary as Trevor. I'm probably more from Deb's saying a plan. Let's get a really good, thought through, well structured, discussed, agreed plan. Not only in terms of what we can do at the Olympics, because to be frank, given how much has got to be done, there's only so much we can do within 10 years. But what's not only in the next decade, it's the next 3 to 5 decades we should be planning for. So that's what I would say.
Terrific. Hey, thanks so much, guys, and thank you also to Scott. I thought that your keynote, wherever Scott is, I thought your keynote was terrific, and really appreciate you coming up and taking the time to take us through those. There was one slide there that really stuck with me, and actually our great state political reporter Steph Bennett texted me straight away pointing it out, which was that scary slide about how our congestion will be proportionately as bad as some of those big cities in the world, and I think that's probably, if there's a call to sort of action out of today's event, I think that was what's really stuck with me. So thank you very much, guys, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you to our panellists, and thanks to Chris Jones. I love that line about Brisbane being the most livable and best city in the world. I think that's very true. Let's make sure that it keeps going that way. We're now going to have a break for dessert, and we'll be back with Robert Craddock and amazing swimmer Emma McKeon after that. Thank you.
Home is where I want to be. Pick me up and turn me round. I feel numb, born with a weak heart. Guess I must be having fun. The less we say about it, the better. Make it up as we go along. With my feet on the ground, head in the sky. It's okay, I know nothing's wrong. Nothing. Oh, I got plenty of time. Oh, you got light in your eyes. And you're standing here beside me. I know the passing of time. Never for money, always for love. Cover up and say goodnight. Say goodnight. Home is where I want to be, but I guess I'm already there. I come home, she lifted up her wings. Guess that this must be the place. Oh, I can't tell one from the other. Did I find you or did you find me? There was a time before we were born. If someone asked, this is where I'll be. Where I'll be. Oh, we drifted in and out. Oh, singing to my mouth. And out of all these kinds of people, you got a face with a view. Oh, I'm just an animal looking for home. Share the same space for a minute or two. And you love me till the whole stops. Love me till I'm dead. I said light up, eyes look through you. Cover up the blind spot, hit me on the head. I get permission to love. I get permission to love. I get permission to love.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're enjoying yourselves. We are now going to move into a special interview. So we're now going to be hearing from the amazing Emma McKeon, who is Australia's greatest ever athlete. So she's won 4 medals at the 2016 Games in Rio and a further 7 medals in Tokyo in 2020. This year, Emma was made a member of the Order of Australia for her services to swimming. She's training at the moment, living on the Gold Coast and training with her long-term coach, Michael Bowl, at Griffith University, where she's also studying a Bachelor of Public Health, which is really honing in on her passion for global health issues. Now, joining Emma on stage will be Crash, Robert Craddock, who is a bit of a legend himself in the sporting area. Not that he would ever boast about that, but he is a bit of a legend to us. He not only is our chief sports writer, but he is probably one of the top authorities on sport and cricket, actually, in Australia. And he is a presenter on Fox Sports and Fox Cricket. So would you please welcome both Emma McKeon and Crash Craddock to the stage. Thank you.
Thanks, Kylie. Welcome, Emma. It's so nice to sit down with you because I imagine your world's changed so much the last couple of years. You had COVID in isolation, and then suddenly since Tokyo, you're very much in demand. Is it sort of things turned upside down?
I guess so. I think in the lead up to Tokyo, it was just so focused, and obviously with COVID, we weren't really traveling anywhere. We were kind of just focused on what we were doing, training every day. It was almost a bit monotonous and boring, but and then even since coming back from Tokyo, it was still up and down a bit, but I was overseas for a lot of that, and then now back into training and everything, it's definitely a lot different than in the lead up to Tokyo.
And we're very lucky today. What a beautiful connection in that the lady who inspired you to be a swimmer, your whole journey is actually in the room at table 15. Tell us that story.
Can't see where table 15 is.
Just over there. There she is. Oh. And typical Susie won't stand up. Miss Modernist. Yeah. Yeah,
Susie, I vaguely remember watching her in 2000, but I think it was just, I don't know, I was so young then, I was like 5, I think. But even from that young age, I just really looked up to her. And I think, and then growing up from then, it was just, she's just so humble and, achieved so much. And that's just something that I really admired from that young age. And just, their values that I hold close to my heart.
That's lovely. And when you, of course, she was managed by your uncle, Rob Woodhouse. So I'd imagine you got to meet her fairly early. Was that sort of a big moment? Like, or was he just sort of Susie who you got to know? Or was it sort of, wow, there she is?
Yeah, there was a few different times. It's pretty cool that from that young age that my uncle was her manager. So I got to meet her. I got to meet my idol when I was like 5 or something. And a couple different times I remember she came and spoke at my school. I didn't get to hear her speak because it was just for the parents, but she stayed at our house and that was just like, whoa. And then another time, I think she might have been living at my uncle's place at the time or something, and my grandma tells me this story that we were going there for lunch or something and Susie was going to be there and I just had to make sure that my dress was all straight and like carrying a little bag, like yeah, just memories like that. So
isn't that nice? And it was interesting because after Tokyo, your coach Michael Bowl said you had 3 months off and he genuinely didn't know whether you were going to swim again. Like he sort of said, that might have been it. You might have just said that's enough. And, was it a hard decision or were you always going to swim on?
It wasn't a hard decision. I was still enjoying my swimming so much, and I think that's the main thing. If I'm still enjoying it and feel like I've got more to give and still so passionate about racing and training and everything, then I'm going to keep going for as long as I can. But I think because the lead up was so, I guess, turbulent and so many ups and downs and things like that, I guess you just don't know. Yep. But that's why he wanted me to have the 3 months off, because it was a huge last few years. He wanted to make sure that I'd had that mental break, could refresh and come back in a place that was good and ready to go again if that's what I wanted to do.
Hey, how tough was COVID? I mean, we were getting cricketers and footballers saying when they delayed the Olympics for a year, they said, how are the Olympians going? Like they said, it must be brutal on them because, like, they were, most of them at least together and you know, getting their competitions done. They said they must be going through to hell and back. Was it hard? You know, that moment when you found out the Olympics were back a year, it must have been really tough, was it?
Yeah, it was tough. I think because I'd just prepared so well in the lead up to if it was going to be in 2020, and you know, it was just doing everything right. Had this kind of end point, I guess, and then even in the lead up when there was so much chatter about, oh, it's definitely going to be cancelled and things like that, I was just in denial because I didn't want to take my foot off the accelerator in terms of training and then it go ahead and then me not be prepared. So I would get kind of frustrated when people would say things that were like it was going to be delayed and things. And then when it finally was delayed, I think it was on a Monday or something, and Australia pulled out. So the Olympics were still actually going ahead at that point. And I was just, well, I don't care if Australia's pulled out, I'm going. Like, I wasn't going to miss that opportunity. And then a few days later, it was obviously postponed. So it took a lot of adjusting, and because you can't really just switch off that intense kind of focus and motivation and things. And so it took a lot of adjusting. And I went back home to Wollongong and spent the next, I think, 3 or 4 months with my family there, and just kind of did nothing really. I tried to stay active, and even in that point it took a lot of focus, I guess, to turn my mind away from the Olympics, because you can't just stay in that kind of mindset for that long, because it's just not, you can't last at that kind of high level for that long.
What about having a partner, Cody Simpson, who is chasing the same dream and training, I guess, you know, the same way sort of thing? Is that, how does that work? It must sort of offer some sort of understanding and empathy there, I guess, is it?
Yeah, it's pretty easy. I mean, we've got the same schedule and we're tired at the same times, hungry at the same times, all that kind of stuff. So makes living very easy, and we can support each other so well in what we do and kind of understand what's going on at different points. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun as well.
Do you ever swap tips, as in, I've just noticed your stroke, it's not quite there at the moment?
No, that's not my job.
Yeah. And as far as you used to be coached by your father, Ron, of course, an Olympian himself. What was that like? Because I guess there were times when, you know, he would have been dad and the coach and he's trying to do both. Was that an interesting experience?
Yeah, I think looking back, I can say that. In the moment, I just didn't like it. Well, I mean, I think it was harder for him than it was for me, because I was the annoying teenager that wanted to do whatever she wanted, sometimes wouldn't attend training, and so it was harder for him to kind of be like, okay, do I be your dad or coach in this moment when she's, you know, being a brat or being a teenage girl. But yeah, I think looking back, it was such a cool thing, because it was something that we could share together. And I think I was about 19, and he said to both my brother and me, because we'd both been coached by him, and that's all pretty much, he just said he wanted us to see if we liked having a coach that wasn't our dad, and he just wanted to give us that opportunity to kind of explore that. So he came up to Queensland, and we both trained up here ever since then. And we always knew that Dad was back home if we did want to move back home and train with him, and he was just always supportive in every way. And I think we could also then go to him and talk about swimming as well, and have it kind of be that support that wasn't your coach either. And I think because both my parents swam, so they've always just been, you don't have to explain anything to them, and they've been there and they've been through it all and kind of know what it's all about, so they can support us in the best way possible, really.
And it was a great Games for Australia, wasn't it? Was there any other, there's quite a few of them, but any one Olympic gold medal that stood out for you as in someone else who you thought, geez, what an amazing effort, one that you just shook your head at and thought, that is outstanding?
Yeah, I would say from Tokyo it was Zach Stubblety-Cook in the 200 breaststroke when he won gold. I think that was incredible. And just the way that he maintained composure, because he often goes out slower than the others, and then he can just, stick to his race plan, know that he has it in him to come over the top of them on the second 100. So that was just something so inspiring to watch. And I think it was only 2 days before my 100 freestyle started. And I remember walking back into the village with him and just being like, oh, what does it feel like? You just won the Olympic gold medal, something that all of us on that team wanted and dreamt of since we were little.
And what did he say?
And he just said, oh, it just doesn't feel real. Like, it hasn't sunk in. And I just remember being like, I want that feeling. I want what he feels right now, to know that he achieved what he wanted. He's got that gold medal. So kind of, motivated me even more and just made me more determined. Well, I mean, I was already so determined, but just more like, I'm going to do this kind of thing.
I wonder, where will you be, you think, in 2032? I mean, we're seeing sports people carry on, Federer went to 40, That may be a step too far. I just thought I'd put it out there, Emma, just in case there was a nibble.
No, I won't be swimming.
But do you see yourself playing any role in the games? It's sort of, obviously, there'll be a big countdown and you'll be one of our most decorated Olympians.
Yeah, I'd love to be part of it. I mean, to have a home Olympic Games in our country, let alone in Brisbane, it's going to be awesome. So definitely won't be swimming, but I'd love to be a part of it.
Yeah. Now, look, we've got a little bit of surprise for you, ladies and gentlemen, because of all Emma's success in the pool, one medal stood out. It was the 100 metres freestyle, the title won by Dawn Fraser, and it was a wonderful race. And so we thought we'd we'd show it up on the big screen, and if you can take us into your world in Tokyo, I'll just get them to roll the first start of it. And this should be Emma coming out onto the pool deck and, just greeting all the nerves and the rival swimmers and what that vibe felt like, and okay, when you're ready, Chris.
The Olympic Games.
And the second Australian into this final, and the favourite, Emma McKeon. 27 years old, she was a bronze medalist in Rio. She's already won gold in the 4x1, bronze in the 4x2, and bronze in the individual 100 butterfly.
She set a new Olympic record in the qualification process through to the final. It sits now at 52.13. It's also a personal best time for her. Well, he's going to be tough, though.
Oh, he's going to be tough. This is going to be close. So I'm not expecting too many fireworks to go off on the first 50. I'm expecting this race to be decided in the final 10 metres. So watch for the finishes. That's going to be all important. Hemskirk swimming in 7. McKeon the favourite in 4.
Now let's just stop it there.
Olympic final,
I reckon.
The women's 100
and we'll
freestyle.
What was happening on the pool deck there? Like, how were your nerves? And you said there was something with a zip at some point.
Yeah, I was just kind of focusing on exactly what was happening in that moment, and even just in the walkout when I'm taking off my jacket and my zipper gets caught, and I remember that and just thinking, I'll just focus on that now.
But a nice little distraction in some ways.
Yeah, so kind of just focusing on exactly what was happening in every single moment. And I really only had kind of 2 race cues for the whole race, because I'd raced it so many times before, and I knew I just had to go out as easy as possible, and then I knew my back half of the race would be faster than the rest, so I just had to do what I knew I could do, or knew I was capable of, and then I knew I would be capable of winning. But I think, I know you don't know you're going to win, and I don't think that anyone who says they know they were going to win, I don't think, you can say that after, but I don't think that's the case. It's, you're capable of winning, but you don't know what anyone else in the race is going to do.
And we're also delighted to have the great Kate Campbell, who won a bronze medal behind you in that event. Kate's here today, ladies and gentlemen. And I suppose it must be interesting because, you know, you've grown up, you've known Kate forever, you know, and she's just right next to you. Are you in your own zone, or do you turn up and say, hi, Kate, you know, like, how does it feel?
Well, at this point, I think we're probably both just focusing on what we need to do. But, you know, we go to the marshalling area together, we're sitting in there together, probably went on the bus that night together. It's your teammates and your friends, so you've got all that there in the lead up to the race, and then once you walk out, you're just focusing on what you need to do.
Just one last one. On a scale of nerves out of 1 to 10, with 10 being, oh, I can barely breathe, and 1 being, no, I'm pretty chilled, where were you on the blocks? What would you be?
On the blocks, I think, honestly, it's a little bit of a blur, but on the blocks, I think I was pretty calm. I was actually more nervous for my semi-final, which I'm not sure why, but I think it was because I had to make it through that to be in the race for the medals.
Yep.
And then once I was at the final, it was just have to do what I've done before kind of thing.
And let's see what you did do. Let's go to the halfway mark. Away we go.
Quick off the blocks, Penny Oleksiak from Canada up in lane 2.
Emma McKeon has had a very good start. Kate Campbell takes a little while to get up and get stroking after the start, but not a lot in it at the moment. Hopkin over in lane number 8 off to a nice start, and bookended by Abby Whitesell across in lane number 1. But now it's the gold caps in the centre of the pool starting to come through at the 50.
Well, and we might just leave it there. What do you think at the halfway mark? Do you have any where the three of you basically, you know, hit the blocks at the same point, and are you hurting? Are you sort of, how are you at that point?
Not hurting yet. You can't really, when I'm swimming, I can't really see too much exactly of where people are. You can just see splash. So on the way out, I was breathing to one side, and I think Kate was on this side of me. So I could kind of just see the splash on this side, and you don't know really where the rest of the field is. But at the turn, I was just thinking, okay, I've got that part out of the way, like the first part out of the way, and now it's a race and everyone's racing home kind of thing.
And do you know how in the 100 metres on the track, Usain Bolt can sprint 100 metres, like there's no tactics, he just goes. Can you do that in the 100, or have you got to save a little bit? Like is it a bit more tactical?
Yeah, it's more tactical. You don't just go for it from the beginning. That's probably more in a 50 freestyle. But 100 freestyle, if you do that from the beginning, you won't have anything to come home with. And we kind of just, Bolly and I, in the lead up, we just knew that the race was going to be in that second 50. And so I wanted to be able to come home strong.
Well, let's see what you did. Here we go.
The 50-metre mark.
Wow, what a great effort. I mean, but what a lovely moment, Kate, coming straight over to you, you know, and clearly happy for you. I mean, that's because it's so unusual, isn't it, in races like that? Your rivals and yet your relay teammates, and there's so many complex emotions, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess it's pretty rare to have two Aussies next to each other like that. So to be able to share that with Kate, that moment, it was special for both of us. So, you know, we'd both had the same kind of turbulent lead up with all the delays and everything like that. So it was just kind of like that moment has finally happened, and we got to race that final, and then we get to share the podium together as well. So it was really special.
Well, great. Two great swimmers. And now we've got a special treat for you folks. We've got a panel discussion. And Emma, I'll ask you to join us up here while we get the chairs ready. And did you celebrate that night? What did you get up to?
No, we didn't celebrate. I think the 50 heat was that night. So, so that was the morning, and then the night was the heats again. So it was just go back, rest, come back for the heats.
Is it hard to keep your emotions on track when you've had a gold medal, then you've got to get up the next night, and, you know, that must be tough.
Yeah, it's kind of a bit of a long week, just trying to keep your emotions in check, because, you know, the roller coaster of them is really tiring, and, you know, if you go too high after a race, then it's hard to bring them back down, and it just takes a toll once you get to day 7 or 8.
Great stuff. Well, look, Emma, thanks for that. Now, please, ladies and gentlemen, will you thank Emma, and also welcome our three panellists, Sydney Olympian, Athens Olympic gold medalist, former world record holder. You've seen her so many times on television, the news, and Torval and Dean skating one time, I remember the great Giaan Rooney. Where's Giaan? Have a seat then.
This one.
Another Athens gold medalist who debuted for Australia at 16 years old in the Commonwealth Games, but had to wait another decade to represent Australia in the Olympics. She won gold in Athens, and a great story herself, Brooke Hanson. And one of Australia's leading Paralympic athletes. He was almost unbeatable in the 400 metres S9 for about a decade, actually. An outstanding swimmer. He won Olympic gold, Paralympic golds in London and Rio, and he's still going. He wants to be involved with the Paralympics even after he stops swimming. Brenden Hall. G'day, Brenden. Good to see you, mate. Well, Giaan, I'll start with you. Coming up from Lismore, and I remember that social media post when you bought the macadamia farm, and you said, "We are nuts, absolutely."
Yep.
And I didn't know whether there was a hidden meaning there.
Absolutely. No. Well, I mean, no one, I'm sure, goes out of their way, especially from where I've come from, to buy a macadamia farm and start farming. But it's certainly been an interesting ride. I think that's the wonderful thing, though, if I can draw parallels in the fact that so many athletes have started as athletes and found themselves in a completely different field life after. I feel really fortunate that I've had quite a few different experiences in my life after swimming, and farming seems like another extension of that. But it's been a tough 18 months since we've been there full time.
How's Lismore?
We're 25 minutes out of Lismore. As most of you would know, Lismore went under twice, floods 1 month apart. We're very lucky our road goes under, we get flooded in, and there are parts of the farm that are affected, but we are one of the very lucky ones that we are high and dry in terms of where we live. But our community's been absolutely smashed, and we are, 8, 9, 10 months on, and there's still not a lot of answers. The one thing that has been extraordinary is the community spirit. It's been amazing.
And when I went through the panel's backstories, one word come to mind: resilience. You've all shown great strength. And Brooke, you missed the Olympics. Do you still twice by the most narrowest of margins? What were the times you missed the Olympics by in Atlanta and Sydney?
Atlanta 96, 11/100ths of a second. Sydney 2000, which Giaan was on that team, I missed by 0.77. So the swimmers in the room, you totally get that that's just a little bit of a small fingernail or a couple of blinks of your eye.
And I can only imagine after Sydney, and you missed that, at some stage you would have had to resume swimming. So you'd have got up for that 5 a.m. session thinking it's a long time to Athens. Like, how did you do it? Like, resilience. And your whole life has been full of challenges, hasn't it?
It definitely has been full of challenges, but I think my resilience definitely comes from just remembering why I started. And all of us in the room, like, you've got to remember where you started and why you wanted to be part of this journey to 2032. And for me, it was remembering that little 4-year-old that wanted to go to the Olympics, that wanted to win a gold medal and to want to represent my country. And I was inspired by the Olympians, some in the room today, Stocky here, and I had Susie O'Neill's poster on my wall, Hayley Lewis, Duncan Armstrong, and I had posters on my wall, motivational quotes, and it was that inner drive and that inner strength to say you will get there, continue on. And it's tough at 4 o'clock in the morning when the alarm goes off, and I had a lot of people say, you're too old, you're too slow, you're never going to get there. But gosh, it was a bloody good feeling when I finally did.
And Brenden, you were also inspired by Sydney in a different way, weren't you? Tell us that story.
Yeah, so I grew up as a youngster. I lost my leg the year before in 1999, but I had started swimming before that. And I became really invested in watching Sydney 2000, and I was like, you see Susie, you see Ian Thorpe, all these great Aussies winning gold medals, and you're like, I wish there was something out there for me one day that maybe I might have the opportunity to do that. And then thankfully enough, like 3 weeks afterwards, the Paralympics is on, and all of a sudden I'm seeing other Australians get up there and they have the same disability as me, and they're winning gold medals, and I was like, that's it. That's what I want to do. I'm going to win a gold medal for Australia. So I think that's really where my dream sort of, came to fruition, and that's when I made the decision that I was like, I'm going to win a gold medal for Australia.
But you're the only man to win a gold medal and lose money. That's correct, isn't it?
Yeah, so that is true, actually. Leading into 2012, my brother was finishing his high school swimming period. He was probably coming to the end of his swimming career as well. He was quite a good open water swimmer, but we both swam the 400 freestyle, and that year he knew he was coming to the end of it, and he's like, all right, mate, I'm going to make you a bet. Whoever swims the fastest 400-metre freestyle this year owes the other person $50. I was like, yep, cool, easy money for me, let's do it. We shook on it. A few months down the track, he had his last swim at Nationals. He rang me up literally like 10 minutes after his swim. He's like, oh, hey, mate, yeah, I've done this time. You owe me $50. And I was like, whoa, 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 calm down. I'm like a month away from swimming at the Paralympics, all right? Just hold up. You're going to give me the $50. It's going to be mine. Anyway, fast forward to London 2012, where my family are over there. My brother is there. My now wife is in the stands, and I'm swimming my 400 freestyle, hopefully going for my first individual Paralympic gold medal. And when I was like, all I remember is smiling the last 25 metres into the wall, like looking at the camera, pretty much just living it up, because I knew I probably wasn't going to win a 400 freestyle by this much ever again. And I was like, there was three things I wanted to do. I wanted to win the gold medal, which I knew was definitely going to happen because I was that far in front. I wanted to make sure I broke the world record, which you don't do until you turn around and like look at the screen. So he's like, one next to my name, great, that's one done. Check the time. The screen's flashing WR, so great, we've done a world record. All right, we got 2 for 3 here. Let's nail it home and then get that $50 from my brother. Mind you, he swam it and he went 409.81, and I ended up going like, when I looked at it, it was like 410.2 something. And so I'm literally, there's a picture of me like mid-cheer in the air saying, yeah, I won gold medal and everything. But like internally, I am crying because I know that I'm going to have to give my brother $50. And mind you, I get up to the stand straight away, and the first person to come to me out of my family is my brother. Didn't congratulate me, no hug, no nothing. He was like, where's my $50?
That's a hard man if ever there was one.
Like,
Fair dinkum. Brenden Hall. Yeah. And Giaan, success can take you in all different areas, won't you? And I mentioned the Torval and Dean ice skating after you.
You love this, don't you?
I
Robert?
do.
Yeah.
I do.
Yes, so strangely enough, a lot of people want to know, are we any good in any other sports? And Brooke's an incredible athlete in the surf as well, and I don't have much ability anywhere else, and that includes ice skating, as it would turn out. The first thing I did after I retired in 2006 was a show called Torval and Dean's Dancing on Ice, and I went straight into that out of swimming. It was the first thing I did. My training partner, who is a little Welsh skater, who came up to here on me, and the whole point of the show is that, the male partner throws the other female partner and does all these flips, and I was like, so am I meant to pick you up? Like, how does this supposed to work? And anyway, we went straight into training, and it was like I was preparing for an Olympics. I'd never skated before, I'd never done anything before, but I didn't want to make a fool of myself on national television. The one thing I did know how to do was to work hard. So all of a sudden, we were there 8 a.m. every morning. We would do 4 or 5 hours on the ice. He was complaining. He was like, we don't need to do this much. I was like, yes, we do. We need to make sure of it. So we did 8 weeks of training. I did one show, wasn't happy with how we did. So we're back on the ice at 8 a.m. Sunday morning, and I got my toe stuck in the ice and broke and dislocated my ankle, and that was my show, done and dusted.
But good on you for having a crack, that's what I say.
A proper crack, yeah.
Oh, sorry about that. Not the line for the occasion, I'm afraid. Emma, what about your hopes for Brisbane leading up? You're seeing young kids come through and whatever, and we've all seen the inspiration of Susie and Kate. What do you want out of the next decade you hope Queensland and Australia can do for Brisbane?
I think one thing would be, like, in the lead up and then post 2032 would be probably to make, I guess, more pathways for young kids coming through, and have things like cost not be a barrier, because I think the more kids we get involved in sports and the more kids that get to, go and try a different sport and more participation, the more dreams can be ignited in these kids. And then the next generation that's watching 2032, they're in sports, and then they get to be get to have dreams ignited by watching that. So it just is a kind of snowball effect, I think.
Yep. And Giaan, on a different note, what don't you want to see? Well, if I said to you, I'll be very disappointed if this happens, what would it be?
Okay, you put me on the spot. In terms of 2032, I've been really fortunate that I've been a part of 2 Olympics as an athlete and a part of 4 Olympics on the media side, 3 of which were in the actual country they were being held at. And so I've seen it from both sides of the fence. And probably the one thing that stands out for me is anyone who's negative about holding an Olympics or a Paralympics is short-sighted. There is so much to be gained and so excitement to be had, and we're talking about the legacy programs that are happening here today, and it's made my excitement levels go up another notch. But what I can say is that one mistake that I thought was made in both Sydney and Gold Coast Commonwealth Games in 2018, in the fact that in Sydney, a lot of Sydney people that I spoke to afterwards said, oh, we left during the Olympics. We left and we went elsewhere because we were worried about how busy it was going to be or how hard it was going to get to anywhere, and so we left. The same thing happened in 2018 in the fact that the Sunshine Coast was packed, Byron Bay was packed, Gold Coast was a ghost town. And I just don't want to scare our locals off because we have so many people from around the world that make their way to an Olympics and a Paralympics to experience it from that side of the fence. And there are so many things to do that don't even involve buying a ticket or spending money. The free events, the live sites are just extraordinary. But we need to engage our locals and we need to have them on board. And that's one thing I don't want to see happen with 2032.
And Brenden, yes, well spoken. It's a great point, isn't it? Those Gold Coast restaurants during the Commonwealth Games, an enduring image is the poor little restaurant owners out the front has hired 4 extra staff thinking they were going to go crazy, and there was, yeah, it's a good point. Brenden, something you'd like to see in Brisbane is as a legacy?
Well, for me, I think it's just the fact that, like, as a Paralympian, and there's not, like, outside this room, I could walk down the street and no one cares about a Paralympian. They wouldn't even know who you are. And I have parents like shying away from like getting to get their kids to ask questions about my leg or like be open with my disability. And like to think that Brisbane's going to be hosting the Paralympics, it's like, well, we got to introduce kids to this now. And so we've got to expose them to this now and be encouraging them of it, like get them to ask questions. We want them to be curious because there's going to be like 6,000 athletes coming here in wheelchairs with arms, with like robotic arms, robotic legs, and it's like everything. And if parents aren't willing to engage with us today and sort of educate their children to know that when 2032 comes around, like these are going to be the kids that are going to be invested in us and watching us compete, I want them to already know about it and not all of a sudden seeing the Paralympics for the first time in Brisbane and being like, well, what's that? And so for me, I'm just like, start using some of our Paralympic stars or our disabled community to sort of help advertise and get that out there so that by 2032 there already is a legacy in place so that it just carries on afterwards.
Definitely, yeah,
Great
definitely.
point. And Brooke,
yeah, I guess for me, I have a child in that access and inclusion space, and we watch the Olympics, we watch the Paralympics, and for someone like him, he was more inspired by the Paralympians, and he can play grassroots sport and gosh, I tell him I work full time just to pay for all the sports that he chooses. So Emma's right about it's great that we've got the opportunity, 10 years to go, but it is costing a lot of parents are only choosing 1 or 2 sports because the cost of every sport they're trying to get, to, I guess, the parents to put their money in their pocket. But yeah, for a kid who was more inspired by what the Paralympians did, I think that was really great because he sort of sat there and went, Mum, I can do this. And maybe pending, his condition and where he's at come 2032, he goes, maybe I could go to both. I could go to the Olympics and the Paralympic Games, and that's inspiring as well. So as a mum who's completely involved in the community, who's leading the way at our surf club and football club and the swimming club, as a parent and as a leader, I can see the legacy that we need to leave for the youth of today. That's going to be important moving forward whilst we deal with extra tech time, screen time, obesity rates are through the roof, and we really have to make sure that we're doing the right thing by the youth of our nation in the build up to 2032 and beyond.
You two girls went to Athens. Do you think Brisbane can match the Athens Olympic Village? I was there. I sense there's a story there. I don't know, Giaan, but
the Olympic Village was great in Athens. Yeah. The swimming pool, it's probably similar to the photo that we saw earlier. There is no pool there anymore, is there?
The stadium's gone.
The stadium's gone, the pool is gone, and that's sad. Like, you want the legacy, you want, of course, the transport, and then you want the venues to stay alive for many years to come. We've got the World Cup next year, and we're going to have events in the whole lead up as well. So you want those athletes from around the world to come and enjoy Brisbane for the next decade and then beyond, for decades beyond 2032.
Our village will be vastly different from Athens.
In what way?
Scott mentioned before on his slide, which I found fascinating, about the frog when they were building Sydney and how they kept having to move and delay. Well, you can imagine Athens, every time they started to dig for the athletes' village, an archaeological dig site of great significance would happen to be uncovered. Oh. So they'd move a kilometre down the road and they'd start again, and then, oh, lo and behold, here's some more remains. Okay, we've got to go a kilometre this way. Anyway, so the village, just by the barest of margins, was actually functional by Olympics time. And as most people would know, travelling through Europe, and the athletes' village was exactly the same. The toilets, you're not supposed to flush the toilet paper down the toilet. It's meant to be in an open waste basket next to the toilet. Now, you've got 6 girls in an apartment, so 2 per room in a 3-bedroom apartment. Let's just say getting very nervous before their major events. And there is no way that we are using the waste paper basket next to the open waste paper basket next to the toilet. And so every day the plumber would come in, the village plumber would come in and say, "You'll not put toilet paper down the toilet." And we're like, "No worries, see you tomorrow." Just every day, there he was, getting angrier and angrier. We won't have that problem here.
I want to talk about food halls, because they're so interesting, because you must go in day 1 and you're not allowed to touch this, and day 10 you can touch anything. But Brenden, who would be, if at short notice, the best eating performance you've ever seen at an Olympic village? Is there anything that stands out?
That's for sure. Walking into one of those food halls as a 15-year-old for the first time in my life, it was 4 football stadiums, big, food everywhere, and at the Paralympics you walk past tables and people are eating rice with chopsticks with their feet, and I'm still getting that out of my mind while I'm just trying to eat my food. But it's as a 15-year-old, it's this Macca's in the corner. Don't go over there, Brenden. That's off limits to you. Okay, cool, that's fine. Meanwhile, one of our teammates was mid-competition. We were day 4 or something, and I think he ordered something 20 cheeseburgers and 100 chicken nuggets. Down them all, right down the table from me, and still competed and raced and swam at PB the next day. So, sometimes that performance, nutrition effect, does it really come into play? We don't know. It doesn't seem like it. So that's one of the things that kind of blows my mind when I was there for the first time.
Well, dining hall, we've got lots of funny stories about dining hall, but Emma's probably got the most amazing story about dining hall in terms of Tokyo. You had your own partitions, didn't you?
Yeah, because of COVID we sat in this, probably this big, the table's about this big, and then they've all just got these glass barriers here, and then down the middle, so you're in a little cubicle to eat. We would go in, wipe the table down, use the hand sanitizer, and you'd be getting, I think they served the food to us. We weren't allowed to touch any of the tongs and things. So you just go around, quickly get your food as quick as you can, sit down, eat as quick as you can, get out of there as quick as you can, because you just don't want to be around people because we were so paranoid. But yeah, that was very interesting.
So vastly different to anything else that
very different to then Rio, which was just a free-for-all.
As in?
I don't mean anything by that. It was just
I think when you say you don't mean anything, you mean everything.
Emma's too nice to say she's a current athlete. She can't,
No, that's right.
Brooke and I will say, you're sitting, like Brenden was saying, you're sitting next to, on one side, you might have a gymnast who's very much watching what they're eating and being monitored about what they're eating. And then on the other side, you might have a weightlifter or a wrestler who's trying to meet a weight requirement to compete in their classification. So looking at the different meals that are going
Yeah.
on
And then,
at a
and then
share
meantime,
table.
you've got the boxers that have got every bit of outfitting from the suitcase on, and they're not eating at all. They're just running around the village trying to get down to weight. So it is an incredible experience to go to a multi-sport event and to be part of the Aussie team. And yeah, anyone that makes that 2032 team will just have an absolute wild time.
Can you just clear up two things about swimmers after swimming? All right. How a diet changed. There's two theories, and I've heard them both. I've retired from swimming. It's great. I can eat anything. Or theory B, I've retired from swimming. No, I've got to cut down my portions because I'm not exercising. Which is the right one?
Oh, very personal, very individual. For me, everyone loves to say, oh, it must be so nice not to be on a diet. And I was like, are you kidding? I was doing 7 hours of exercise a day. I could eat whatever I wanted.
Oh, really?
It wasn't an issue. Absolutely. But again, very personal, very different. I think it's more an awareness of the fact that what you don't realise is going to happen is that your body is still going to crave the same amount of food and the same types of food that it was having when you're an athlete and you were doing 7 hours of exercise a day. That doesn't just switch off, and they're habits that are formed from such a young age that they are now part of your being. So it's an awareness thing of going, I am not doing that much exercise anymore. Do I want a second help? Am I having a second helping just because that's what I've always done, or am I hungry? Am I eating at midday because that's what I've always done, or am I hungry? So it was more a shift of mindset, I would say.
Yeah, and then for me, just like the rest of the nation should still be doing, was just because I finished swimming doesn't mean that that's it, I'm not exercising anymore. So I, unlike Giaan that doesn't like the pool these days, I still love the pool, I still love the water, I still swim or surf most days. So for me it was more that lifestyle change of I need exercise for my mental health, I love the water and I want to continue that. And then yeah, if I want to look good at my 50th birthday after having 4 kids, well, I'm going to put into place some exercise and some intermittent fasting. So again, that's just been personal choice of where you're at with your own health and your own exercise goals.
I feel like two of the incredible women in the room, Brooke Hanson and Susie O'Neill, could still possibly pull on a pair of togs and compete for Australia now.
Yeah.
They're extraordinary.
But you did say that you weren't joking at all, were you? You thought that Susie could still do it, didn't you?
Oh, absolutely. What did you do last weekend, Susie? You did Noosa Triathlon a couple of weeks ago, and
Noosa?
Yeah, Noosa, and then the something somewhere swim. There you go. See, she's just extraordinary.
Hey, get her up here. That's what I say.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, Giaan, isn't it? Like they say, swimmers go 2 different ways after they retire. Like either still love the pool, everything, or just no, I'm done. Is that right?
I think it's a mindset thing. I retired at 23. 2006, and I haven't swum a lap since. And for me, that's a really healthy place to be. That's because I feel so incredibly grateful and proud of my swimming career, but I don't miss it at all. And I was lucky to retire when I was ready on my terms at the top of my game without any regrets. And very few athletes get that chance to do it that way. I was ready for the next challenge. I had mentally made that move on from sport. And so as I said, for me, that was the right decision. I loved racing. By the end of it, I hated training. So the idea of me going for a swim now and doing the component that I found incredibly difficult, not being able to do the component that I loved, holds no interest to me. But I see it as a really healthy place that I've transitioned well and moved on. Whereas, as Emma said, I definitely won't be swimming at the 2032 Olympics. I question that. She'd probably be good enough. And Brenden would like to announce his desire to swim at his 7th Paralympics in 2032.
Well, could you get there, Brenden? but in all seriousness, could you? Do you think there'll be in 2032 we'll see these remarkable stories of Australian swimmers who just stretched themselves right to the end and got there? Do you think that'll happen?
Oh God, yeah, 100% there would be. I reckon there's probably people coming up to the 4th games, I reckon, in Paris now, and they'll be like, no, I'll probably be able to stretch it until 2032, or I can guarantee you if they've finished swimming last year in Tokyo, they're probably going to switch sports and they'll probably be in triathlon or paddling, kayaking, who knows? Because you, as an athlete, you spend your whole career hoping for the chance to compete at a home games, and it's an experience that you're always going to remember for the rest of your life because it's so different compared to competing in Beijing, for example. So like we had Commonwealth Games on the Gold Coast, and that was technically my home games, and I loved that more than Beijing in 2008, purely because the crowd and the Australian character and culture behind it just changes the whole atmosphere and how you approach it as an athlete. You kind of get to, it's like, yes, I finally get to show off in front of my hometown. And I think that's just that mentality of a drive in an athlete. And yeah, don't get me wrong, it crossed my mind. I all of a sudden started being like, all right, what sports can I go to after Paris that'll guarantee me a spot in 2032?
Don't worry, I was joking, and you looked at me and I went, oh, maybe that's not a joke.
Like I have legit, I've spoken with my wife and my friends. My wife's like, go on, do it. I dare you. And so I've...
Well, what's a short list of sports that you think, actually...
Well, I've gone... I was like, oh, maybe I go and try and take on Curtis McGrath in kayaking or something like that. So, or maybe I could try and save myself and maybe get into running and go to triathlon. I was like, that's a shot. There's still swimming in that. If I get a big enough lead in the start, I'll be fine. But,
that's great.
Yeah, I was like, no. My athlete competing days after Paris will be done.
Well, you never say never. I'll be interested to speak to you after Paris. And in swimming, we saw some great Americans in Dara Torres and Jenny Thompson stay until later on. And so it'd be great to see Kate Campbell and Emma McKeon do the 50 metres freestyle in 2032.
100%.
Get in the weight room.
I'd pay to see that.
There you go. Brendan's going to pay to see that, Kate. So.
Yeah, Kate's like, not a chance.
But isn't that interesting? Because I'm watching Emma, watching you, when you're talking about this, and I think she's getting quietly stirred up to the point where she's thinking, you know what, it's only 9.5 years. Is that the truth, Emma?
No, I'm not thinking that.
I was hoping to finish on this big rousing note.
Sorry.
Stick around forever in 2032.
It's 10 years away.
Yeah. Well, let's put it down as a possible maybe, but probably not. Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think we all agree you've seen the present and the past and the beautiful flavours of Australia's Olympic and Paralympic athletes. They're joys to deal with as a journalist. We love tracing their stories, and there's plenty more to come. And I feel a certain spirit in the room that you've generated by your beautiful stories. Will you please welcome Brooke, Hanson, Brenden, Giaan, Rooney, and Emma McKeon. Thank you. Great, Emma. Thanks. Thanks, Giaan. Thanks, Brenden. Great, Brooke. Thank you.
Well, wasn't that absolutely fabulous? Riveted. Everyone had something amazing to contribute, and aren't we lucky to have so many amazing people in our panel sharing with us their insights today. So before I wrap up, I would like to thank Crash Craddock for his wonderful interviewing. Also Jonesy, Chris Jones, editor of the Courier Mail, for moderating that wonderful session. Those panellists as well, Scott Charlton for his keynote address, and Jason Scott for his opening. I'd also like to quickly just thank our sponsors, so University of Queensland, Brisbane Airport Corporation, St Baker Energy Innovation Fund, Howard Smith Wharves, Bank of Queensland, the Star Entertainment Group, PwC, TransUrban, RACQ, Brisbane City Council, Urbis, and 7 News Brisbane. So thank you everyone for coming. This concludes our formalities. If you do have a drink still with you that you haven't managed to down, you're welcome to take it outside and enjoy. But we do need to move out of here pretty much right now. But you can but enjoy. And we'll see you next year for the next Future Brisbane. Thank you for your attention.